Okay, yeah. Gilbert, we are live on YouTube.
I can't see it yet, though. It's linked.
It is linked and it is live. So I think it has a delay of 20 seconds. So you can start.
Yeah, we can. So should I start?
Yeah, Gilbert, I think you can start since you're already there.
A warm welcome to all of you here. And this comes out from the entire Department of Travel and Tourism at Don Bosco College. I would like to thank all the panelists for accepting our invitation, and I would like to thank in a great way Varun from Seoul Traveling for helping us set up this entire panel discussion and giving us a great support at the Department of Tourism and Travel in Don Bosco's Panjim. So every year we celebrate Magnify 2020. I mean, this year is 2020, but every year we celebrate Magnify on the 27th of September in celebration of World Tourism Day. But this year, since things are different and we thought we'll go online, so we chose of tying up with Seoul Traveling, who has given us a great support in the platform as well as organizing the entire event. So a brief introduction about Don Bosco College first. The Don Bosco College in Panjim is run by the Salesians of Don Bosco's. It's a religious order from the Catholic Church, founded by Saint John Bosco in the year 1859. So we have a network of educational institutions all over the world. And in Don Bosco's, in Panjim in Goa, here we have it located right in the capital city of Panjim, which we have the school first, then the higher secondary college, and now we have a very vibrant society here in Panjim and in Goa itself. So the Don Bosco College was established in 2001 by the Goan Salesian Society. And we are currently having 7 departments, right from the BBA Travel and Tourism, BA Mass Communication, the entire sorry for the delay. Yeah, BA Social Work. We have Masters in Social Work, and we have Bachelors in Computer Application. So so that's all about Don Bosco's. Now I come to our great Varun. Thank you, Varun, first of all, for accepting our invitation and also coming ahead and signing up. We are planning and drafting an MOU currently with Varun on different terms. Basically, he'll help us into grooming our students, helping them into even getting placed through campus placements, and also giving training and development for our students in terms of travel walks and heritage walks in this department. So Varun is a well-known personality in the travel industry here in Goa. Varun was born and brought up in the picturesque Goan village of Benaulim. He has graduated with a degree of electronics and telecommunication engineering. He's worked for 4 years in the Tata Consultancy Services. His last job was in Frankfurt on-site as an on-site coordinator with a multinational bank. And Varun quit his job in 2017, founding Seoul Traveling. So Seoul Traveling has now become a big institution in Goa here, with Seoul Traveling being a leading offbeat experience-based travel company in India. Seoul Traveling has been featured in various magazines like National Geographic, Traveler, Condé Nast, Traveler, and Lonely Planet for all the experiences that they have shared. It has also featured in Live Mint for curating one of the most unconventional trails in India. Its main objective is basically to introduce experience-based travel as a mindset and making traveling as a part of people's lives instead of luxury. Seoul Traveling has a presence of over 30 locations in Goa itself on knowledge, and are curated and conducted by local experts of these villages, of these 30 villages that we have. A few prominent ones that have featured with soul traveling are Houses of Goa trails, interacting with house owners and meals, Islamic heritage of Goa trail, the Three Kings village experience in Kansaulim, the life of Pau, the Divar Island exploration, among different others. So they have also been instrumental in reviving some of the most unique festivals of Goa, projecting them in a different way to the world. Right, the Musol Khel in Chandor, the Chikal Kalo in Mashel, and also Shisharani of Kankon. So in this pandemic time, also Varun has reinvented themselves also by collaborating with experienced partners all around the world, and has tie-ups currently in Tanzania, Mexico, Japan, Netherlands, among other countries. So I think this whole discussion will be taken up a notch because of the presence of our panelists. And thank you, Varun, for collaborating with the Department of Travel and Tourism. And I hand over the stage over to Varun to introduce the panelists, please.
Thank you so much, Gilbert. That's a very, I'm really grateful for your introduction. And I think we can start with the session. Hello, everyone. My name is Varun, and I welcome you on behalf of Soul Traveling. As Gilbert has already introduced Soul Traveling, I will not want to dwell further in that, but I would just like to say one thing. We at Soul Traveling are committed to change how tourism is being perceived in Goa. And trust me, we are having a lot of fun doing it. And we all are always grateful to the work that Don Bosco College has been putting up in the field of education and now in the field of travel and tourism. And we are really excited to partner with them in future as well for grooming students for this industry in future. Everyone says India lives in its villages. But when we think of tourism, it has always been the sprawling hotels, cities, and monuments that we think of. Travel for us was a luxury to be done after your regular work and once you save enough. What we don't realize is making travel a part of your life helps you develop as a person and also helps you embrace differences around the world, different cultures, and also to discover yourself. Now we are glad that the trend is slowly changing. People are moving towards experience-based tourism. They want to take something back from the place they visit, meeting the locals, sharing a nice meal, and making memories. The COVID pandemic has also put us in a situation where we need to focus more on the immersive experiences and getting closer to nature. How do we do this? Now, this is the big question that we have for our panelists today. Today, I have with me some of the Maharathis of the industry, people who have spent their time and energy and a lifetime making sure that rural tourism is something that people focus on. So please help me welcome today's panelists and guests for this Magnify 2020 session on tourism and rural development. First up, we have the most amazing Mr. Mahendra Bab Alvarez. Now, Mahendra Bab is an artist, a sculptor. He's the creator and founder of Ancestral Goa and Bigfoot at Lotlim. And he has many accolades to his name. He actually has won the State Art Award and International Gold Millennium Award. He has an experience of more than 40 years in this industry, and he brings change is something that he actually loves and something that is very close to his heart. Along with Mahendra Bab, we have Talula De Silva. Now, Talula is a passionate architect. She actually promotes sustainability, ecology, and Goa. Social and environmental issues are something that are very close to her heart, and she has also been a tech speaker in the past. To join Talula and mine, we have someone amazing with us. We have Mr. Vinod Sridhar, who is primarily a communicator, facilitator. He has close to 20 years of experience in sustainable living and making sustainable living accessible to people. One of his ventures is Journeys with Meaning, which was founded in 2007. And it was a way to bring inspiring stories of hope and innovation to the urban who often miss out on this. So I'm extremely grateful to have this, amazing panelists with us today, and I welcome you all on this stage. So starting the discussion with Mahendra Bab. Mahendra, I'll pass it to you on your opening comment. What do you feel about rural development and tourism? And can you tell a little bit more of the work that you have been doing?
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. Rural tourism.
Yes, we can hear you, Mahendra, loud and clear.
It is something what you all are doing. It is nothing but taking people or giving people a taste of the life, the actually folk life or whatever we call it. Or taking them to the actual houses, showing them the culture, the traditions, how simple things are done, and bringing people down to earth instead of putting a lot of what we say is the overall makeup or whatever, showing more cosmetic tourism. Here we are planning to take them down to earth or interaction with nature and how nature can be with us. That is what I feel is the rural tourism.
Thank you, Mahendra. Thank you for that amazing introduction. Let me move on to Talula, who has been working so rigorously in this field of sustainability and rural tourism. So Talula, how do you feel about sustainability, rural tourism, and how it can bring about a development? Your opening comments, please.
You're muted.
Hello, am I audible?
I can hear you. I couldn't hear Talula.
Yeah, even I think there are some issues in the connectivity, Talula. No, we cannot hear you. It's not muted, but we still can't hear you. So till we fix that, let me just. No, Talula, we are not able to hear you. I don't know what is the problem. Probably the system the system being used is not on the mic or something like that.
Now can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Now we can
Now
hear
we
you.
get you. Now we got you. Yes.
Okay. I think we'll all check before we can speak every time. Yeah. So basically, to me, I don't know whether you heard the definition earlier. So for me, tourism is nothing but going to a place I'm visiting and seeing it and experiencing it. And for me, this is beautifully captured, as a memory when I would go with my father in our village in Mashing Kankon to see the mangroves, to explore the river or the beach. And after all of this was done, we would simply go to a local chai shop where we would have, the local batat vada, mirchi and chai. And I think for every visitor, I think to be able to connect to the place, to the essence of the place is very important. And also to be able to support, local people who are doing local businesses is equally important. And to me, that is the understanding I have, of rural tourism, rural development, and tourism per se.
Thank you, Talula. It's really great, and the work that you've done in this field is tremendous. Let me move to Vinod, who has had quite a journey, not only in Goa, but across India in this field. So Vinod has worked on things, places ranging from the Ladakh to the northeast of India, and he has actually worked with locals to create these ecosystems in these places, and he still does it with Journeys with Meaning. So Vinod, why don't you tell us a little bit about Journeys with Meaning and your journey in this field?
Thanks, Varun. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
So my
Yes.
journey with Journeys with Meaning started in 2007. So it's been about 13 years since I've been running this organization. Essentially, it started off as a way for me to connect people to the experiences that I was having. So I used to travel around India quite a lot, and typically I would just, go to a village, stay in somebody's house, take the local bus, talk to the people working in the fields, things like that. And through those experiences, I had such amazing learning about how people lived, what kind of cultures they experienced in their own lives, and how they farmed their food, how, things like that, what kind of agriculture they practiced in their villages, what were the challenges they faced year on year. So these are the questions that I used to talk to them about, and I realized I knew next to nothing, despite a very, privileged education in the city. I realized I didn't know much about the other India, and most of India, as you know, lives in the villages. So for me, I felt like if being so educated in a big city and all that, I still don't know much about other Indians and how they live. I should expose, as many people as I can to similar experiences, and that's how Journeys with Meaning was born. So started off very small. They're still very small, but we take people around the country. We go and stay in villages, in people's homes, and engage with pretty much these kinds of questions. And like Talula said, we also contribute to the local economy through that kind of an experience. We make sure that the money we spend goes to the local villages and the people who live there. And a lot of our questions are around this, like how do we learn, what can we learn from each other? So we try not to go in with the idea that we know more than them. And in fact, we mostly don't. So the idea is to go and spend time with them and learn as much as we can. And it's beautiful because each location has its own way of, looking at the same things. And yeah, so that's what my journey is about for the last 13 years now.
And it's a beautiful journey, and you're so humble that you're still small, but you're not actually. You've been doing great amount of work, and it's been a beautiful journey. Vinod, I've had the privilege of knowing you throughout this journey as well, and I hope we can bring all this wisdom together and create some interesting stuff in Goa, and make sure that the tourism progresses in the right direction. Mahendra Bab, let me ask you the first question of the afternoon. You started way back in 1983, probably when things were a little different when you said about tourism in Goa. You have seen it change over a period of time, and it has mostly gone towards commercial tourism. We have not had that much of experience-based tourism or rural tourism, so to call. How do you see this journey from the time you started? How have things changed, and what has, if at all, gone wrong or gone, not perfect as you would have wanted it?
Well, gone wrong, we cannot say anything. It is how we look at things. Now, if you see ancestral Goa, like before building it, it was around 3 to 4 years. I had to do the similar study, live with people, live with a fisherman and see what is his way of life, how he lives, live with a farmer, see what he eats and what he cooks, live at the tavern, stay with someone in a slightly better house, or we call it a middle class family. So all this study was done to portray it at ancestral. Now, earlier, now way back in 1993, this was studied, or rather rural tourism was so to say documented, and ancestral Goa was built. Now, we already did this, so to say, a rough exercise then. Then on, once ancestral Goa began, it was very difficult for us to bring people to that place, because Goa was just sold for its sand, sun, the beach, the temple, and the church. There was nothing else. I remember way back then, there was in Arpora, I think there was one place known as Haystack, run by the Braganzas. So there they served dinner with music. So anytime, whenever I said, okay, ancestral Goa is something, so they asked me, is it like Haystack? So people to understand was difficult. Now slowly people have started moving in the village off from that. And it is high time we start working more on the rural part and giving people experiences. This is what people are wanting. Earlier it was just relax on the sand. Now, how we worked all these years. Slowly it was a big, what should I say, a big challenge for us to bring people from the beach to the hinterland. But somehow we managed to do it. Now we have to take it a little further, give people experience to this place. What went wrong when we say there is nothing what has gone wrong? The question is, when people do something, they don't do it with the whole heart, so to say. And then the things are done in a little shoddy manner, and those are the things which go wrong. Like simple thing is the garbage which we make. If we are conscious about throwing things around or littering places, that can solve a big issue. So those are the small things which make the whole place a little off balance, I should say. Over to Varun.
Thank you so much, Mahendra. And I'm sure slowly the journey will get better and we will have very exciting things coming in. Talula, you have worked in different segment. I mean, you started off, you were educated as an architect, and then you have worked in sustainability throughout. You worked with different springs which have to be restored. You worked with different projects in the farming sector. You've done the traveling door and a wide variety of range of things. For rural tourism, who are the stakeholders involved, and how should they be taken into confidence to take this forward, and what kind of things can be done in and how can we actually move from what tourism we have to focus on rural tourism?
Very good question, Varun. So, who are the stakeholders of rural tourism? I think people. And when I say people, I think it's the villagers, because where do tourists go? They go to all the villages. It's not just the city that the tourists come to. And if you're saying villages, then it is the people from the villages that are the main stakeholders. And if you look at the how tourism has evolved also in Goa, is simply because people, from outside wanted to come to Goa for its simplicity. Simply, what do you mean by the simplicity? Simplicity of the people in its villages, simplicity of the pristine environment, the simplicity of life itself. So people were coming for this. And today, if you see, a lot of things have got commercialized, and somewhere the simplicity has got lost. So the true stakeholders are the villages. We have to take them into confidence, and if we do that, that means whatever businesses are running by people in the villages will be supported. And I think that is the way forward to be able to support people in the villages. Second is, we have a lot of youth, entrepreneurs who want to do many things. Even when we do let's say a walk, we generally try to do a walk where we can connect to a local villager. So if we go to the salt pans, it is somebody who is a stakeholder there. I'm not just going and saying that, this is something that you need to look at in a very superficial way, but we are going in and we are looking at a person who's working within that, space, and we get feedback from that person. Now, what happens is when you have entrepreneurs, when you have people working in these sectors on ground, it is very important for the visitor to, to meet the person, to know the challenges. Otherwise, you are, like how tourism is promoted in the rest of the world. And of course, in some places in Goa, is simply that you go for a certain kind of pleasure. So you're coming to a space and you have all these trappings, of, let's say, good food, you have a great view, you have a great beach. But without connecting it to all the elements that make it so beautiful, without connecting it to all the aspects of what gives you that happiness, then it's just a superficial experience and a superficial kind of happiness. So when you meet the people who are cooking the meal, when you meet people who belong to that area, let's say a beach where there is a fishing community who's doing fishing, you understand the challenges that go into fishing, you see where your fish comes from that lands on your plate. All this helps you to connect in a very sympathetic, in an empathetic and a sensitive manner. I think so. The people on ground, the villagers are the stakeholders, and the youth, the young people, or any others who are local to the place, who are entrepreneurs, are the stakeholders. It is not unlike what we think, that the government is a main stakeholder, or some other big company is a stakeholder, or a big hotel is a stakeholder. I think it's the people of that village or that space who are the key stakeholders and who have to be involved in any enterprise, particularly if it is to do with tourism.
I'm sorry, I just quickly got disconnected and back again now. Thank you for Talula. I'll move to Vinod now. And when I was working in Germany, or even when I was traveling across India, slowly people wanted to do small experiences where you go to a house, you have lunch with a family, go in a remote village, do something there, even farming, even other kind of experiences. And we can slowly see this trend happening in Goa as well. You have worked across the country, some of the places including Ladakh especially, or the northeast of India. So how was an experience working in all these places, and now you're in Goa, based in Goa? How can these experiences be, utilized to change how things are done in Goa?
A great question. So I think to begin with, I'll talk a little bit about my experiences in other parts of the country. And so one of the things that we did was to not actually, we simply told people that, listen, we are going to Ladakh, we are going to stay in a village, we are going to meet the local people, and we are going to have some interactions with people there who are doing really good work. So in each of the places that we visit, we try and find something beforehand. Like, for example, in Ladakh, we visit the ice stupa artificial glaciers, which Mr. Sonam Wangchuk has been building for some years now. So what we do is we try and find some experience like that, which connects with a lot of issues that we anyway talk about, like ecology, for example, how people in cities can live more sustainably. We look at gender, we look at democracy, we look at politics, all sorts of things that connect to local issues. So what we try and do is that's why we don't pick places based on the places. We don't say, okay, let's go to all the places in the country, but where are interesting things happening? And as those interesting things happen, we try and work with the local organizations. And the beautiful thing is, these interesting things don't have to be large things. They don't have to be big scale projects. They can be really small things. Like, for example, in Meghalaya, it's not something that people do, but a place that we visit are the sacred forests or sacred groves in Meghalaya, where people haven't done something. They haven't chopped them down. And that's the only thing they haven't done, right? But those forests are 800 years old. And we go and spend time there. We talk to people. In Ladakh, for example, they're doing something, which is they're building ice stupa glaciers. So we go and learn how these are built. But those experiences happen alongside our stay in the local villages. So we stay in the village, we kind of spend our time there. in the Sundarbans, we talk about how the cyclones affect them. We talk to tiger attack victims, crocodile attack victims. We go on a little walk in the mangroves and see what are the things there. So very little things, small things, but those small things can lead to beautiful conversations about much larger things. So, like for example, in Journeys with Meaning, I was listening to what Talula was saying just now, and she used the word connecting a few times, and that's exactly what we try and do. That we talk about 4 disconnects that we are experiencing today, because of which the world is where it is today. So, in a very simplistic manner, the 4 disconnects are that we are disconnected. Humans are disconnected from nature. I think that's almost anybody would agree with it. That being in Goa, of course, we are a little bit more connected because it's greener here and more accessible, but other places are not so much. Then we are disconnected from each other. Like I know more about life in London and Rome and Europe and all of that because we live similar lifestyles, but I don't know as much about the Khasis or how the Ladakhis live, and they're my fellow Indians. So there's that disconnect, and the disconnect between head and heart. Like we all live from here now, not so much from here, and a disconnect between the actions that we take and what consequences they lead to. So what we try and do is very simple. On the trips, we try and reconnect people to all these things through little experiences. And that, because we do it in a rural setting, in a village, it's really nothing more than, we call it rural tourism, but really it's nothing more than watching how people live in the villages. And if we can, try and participate in it to some extent. And that's really what all this is about. And I think in Goa, we could do something very similar, which is there are beautiful things happening in Goan villages, beautiful experiences, which the people themselves may not know the value of that. I can give you an example of this. In Meghalaya, for example, now everybody has heard of the living root bridges. In the last 10, 15 years, these things have become very popular. But believe it or not, these bridges are more than 150 years old. And one would have thought that if they were around for 150 years, why weren't they on the tourist map for all these decades? That's because the locals didn't think anything of it. They said, okay, it's just one thing we used to cross the river. That's it. What's the big deal? Why is it such a big phenomenon? But they don't understand that these are the only bridges in the world that grow stronger over time. Like any other bridge, including the Atal Setu, the day it was finished, it's breaking down after that. But these bridges have stood the test of time and they become stronger. So, but the local community did not get that until somebody said, like, listen, you've got something very beautiful and unique, and you need to make sure that other people learn about this. So I think Goa has a lot of similar stories, and these are the kind of little experiences that can be shared and just brought to light in front of people. I think like that's the way ahead, really. Like when I came here, I saw this little, like, the way the creeks have those little dams, the check dams, I don't remember the word for it, but the water kind of coming in, the tide coming in opens those up. And when it goes out, it traps the fish inside. So that's such a little innovation, but it's such a simple innovation, but such a beautiful one. And people can get to see that in action, something like that.
So
just an example.
Absolutely. And it actually is a part of most of our trails in soul traveling. What you're talking about is manas and bans. And these are natural wonders because they were actually created more than thousands of years ago. Most of the land in Goa, a lot of land in Goa is not suitable for agriculture, but this was the practice which was done to cultivate, reclaim land and cultivate. And they are actually wonders of the world, I would say, in a way, if projected right. And it also gets me to these trails that we do in Rapport and in Kankon, where we talk with the original inhabitants of Goa, the tribal communities, and they have this beautiful experiences with food and things, and it is, trust me, it is amazing. But let me try to play the devil's advocate for this time. Vinod, you have spoken at length about how these experiences are, and it sounds amazing and fascinating. But I'm sure this comes with its share of challenges. So for you, what are these main challenges if you want to go on and create it and cross that line and actually develop this kind of thing?
So I think once again, I think it's important to play that role of the devil's advocate from time to time, because then the experiences that we come up with will be much stronger at the end of it. Some of the challenges that we've faced are people's mental blocks. They come expecting a certain standard of living or a certain set of amenities, which often in a rural setting is not possible and not desirable even. even if it were possible. So like one such example is I'll give an example of Ladakh, which has these dry toilets, because they don't have too much running water there. And because they don't have it, they've developed a beautiful indigenous technology of the dry toilets, which is a 2-storied building where you go into the first floor, which has a hole in the ground, and you do your jobs from there, and you pour sand, not water. You cover it up with sand. And over a period of time, maybe a year or two, this decomposes and then it's used as fertilizer for the soil, in the fields. So it's a beautiful closed loop system where nothing goes waste. No water is wasted. Even the manure, that's not wasted, it's used. But when we take people from the city over there, they really struggle to use it because they're not used to sitting, squatting, or maybe even using this kind of a toilet. And so it takes a little bit of time before we can kind of get them to use it. My usual strategy is to take them to a place where there are no other kinds of toilets available. So very quickly they have to give in and use it. Once they try it, of course, they're very comfortable with it. But if we could do a minor tweak, like this redesign, maybe, Talula being an architect would have some ideas on that. But something like this could be redesigned so that it's familiar to city folk, but uses the technology that's already there, So can we build a tiled toilet with a flush tank with sand in it instead of water? And people use it like they do back home, So those are like simple tweaks that would help.
Actually, this has already been, just sorry to interrupt you, but something like this is, sorry to interrupt you, but something similar was prevalent in Goa 20, 30 years back. In a way, it's the pig-style toilets, or kumau as we used to call it. The whole thing was there would be a hole and there would be pigs who would be there. There wouldn't be any flush or anything like that. And this was prevalent in Goa just 20 years ago. So
Varun,
talking about something similar there.
Yeah, Varun, I just wanted to add that, so you are right, the kumau was used in not only Goa, but also China. So Goa and China are the two places, India and China are the two places which had these two practices. And like Vinod was, asking me whether, this could be done in Goa in many ways. I think it can. I've already tried with something called the Eco Loo. And this was many years ago. We worked with an NGO called Mitsuko Trust, and we tried this pilot in a couple of villages with a lot of success because they had no other option but to try this. And I agree with you completely, that we have to look at the issues that are connected to tourism and look at solutions where we make many of our, activities such that they close the loop.
Yeah. And I'd like to add on a couple of other challenges that have,
if I may add.
Maybe after Mr. Albani.
Yes. No, Vinod, please go ahead. Let's continue with the challenges because, I interrupted you in the middle, but please continue.
Okay. So just a couple of quick ones. One is the prevalence of social media, I think, is a big problem because what's happened is, like, in one of the villages in Meghalaya that we visited, many of you might have heard about it. It's a place called Molenong, and it's generally called the cleanest village in Asia. And it's definitely like one of the cleanest places that I've had the good fortune of visiting. But the truth is there are many other villages in Meghalaya which are equally or even better than Molenong. But because of social media, it has kind of captured everybody's attention, and therefore it takes away attention from all the other villages that have very similar practices. So how do we kind of regulate the use, or how do we use social media in a way that villages don't get overwhelmed? It was very sad to see this because Molenong, on the day I visited in 2010, it had exactly one visitor, which was me. And I think 2 or 3 years ago, when we visited, there were over 1,000 people there on that day. And, so this is one of the dangers because everybody likes to post these stories online, and that becomes a challenge in a sort of indirect way. It's in a way, it's great for the village because there are so many people in stories and all of that, but they can't handle 1,000 people coming a day, and then very quickly it becomes commercialized in a certain way, and that can cause a lot of damage. So that's something to keep in mind while, like working in Goan villages, that how do we do it in a way where the local community doesn't get overwhelmed by it, and on the other hand are actually able to benefit, really from it. So that's just a thought. And in terms of pricing, it's really about, because people, again, villages typically would tend to have a little low volume. You don't want over like too many people visiting at one time, and therefore the price has to be kept a little higher so that it's a fair price. Everybody gets what they deserve to get, and yet you don't overcrowd it. Yes, just a couple of thoughts on.
Thank you so much, Vinod. And I think that makes complete sense. And this is an important guideline for us when we develop this kind of tourism, that we need to be careful on what kind of impact we are having on the village itself. And the pricing model, as you suggested, it is not, raw pricing where everyone just, we take everyone there. Uh, Let me bring at this point Gilbert in. He has raised his hand. So anyone on this call, if they want to ask questions, they can raise their hands and I will allow them. So Gilbert, you had a question for the panelists. Let me bring Gilbert in and check his question.
Yeah, actually, Mr. Vinod has very rightly said the last part, but I would like to add two questions that have come up on the YouTube chat where we are streaming it live. We have one from Ma'am Cheryl Venin, who's also a faculty at the Bosco College. So she has asked basically, how do we reduce the impact of mass tourism, which Goa is already reeling under? And we cannot actually be channeling most of our tourists down in the villages. So that's one important question, I think. So Sir Sridhar also just mentioned about that point some time back. Also, we have another from Mr. Yash Prabhugaonkar, who actually asks a question that basically a good standard of living, that is housing, education, and healthcare, is everyone's right. So what is the opinion of our panelists that basically when youth shift from the villages to the cities, and that's one of the reasons why villages are suffering from migration? Yeah, so Varun, can you?
Yes, thank you so much for that, Gilbert. I think let's start with Mahendrabab here, because he has seen the impact for last 40 years of mass tourism on Goa. And if we channelize all of this to the rural villages of Goa, again, there is a question of being overwhelmed. So how do you control this? How do you control? Because even the villagers sometimes are skeptical of allowing people, thinking that, oh, no, this will grow into something uncontrollable. And we have seen it happen when the government gets involved probably and markets it in a very haphazard way. We have seen things happening. So how do we control this, Mahendrabab? Yes, Mahendrabab, I think you're on mute. Mahendrabab, you're on mute. I think you'll need to unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Is it okay? Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes, perfect.
There is some problem with the connectivity. I'm sorry. The flow, once it comes, it's going to be a little difficult to control it, because everybody wants to experience it. Now, there is one thing what we can do is restrict. When you can't get it, that is the time when you feel the urge for it. If we restrict, that will way of quality, instead of just getting the masses, where you say people are cooking on the roads and doing what should I say is just sleeping on the roads, coming with their own vehicles. If we start controlling spaces and taking the people who are really interested, that so
Sorry, I'm not able to hear clearly.
Yeah, I think it's disconnected.
Yes. Yes,
hello?
I think we could. Yeah, we could hear. We could hear your answer.
Am I
and I think
audible
then,
now?
Yes, Mahendra.
Yeah, now he's clear.
Yeah. I think I've heard.
I think Mr. Mahendra is facing some network issues. So till that gets better, I will just bring in Talula to continue with this question. Mahendra, I think there are some network issues at Mahendra end, and let's go with Talula. Talula, now the question comes as the same. I would want you to talk a little bit more about if there is an inflow of tourism which is completely diverted to villages, and Goa has a huge coastline with a lot of coastal community, fisher folks and all. How will it impact them? Will it be beneficial to them, or will it be detrimental to them as a community? And when I'm talking about this community, it is the fishing community, the farming community, or the bakers maybe, or things like that. How will it impact them?
See, I think this needs a very concerted thought. You can't just do it in a more spontaneous manner. And if the shift is required, then it needs to be planned so well that there is a very positive outcome. And when I say that, I'm not a supporter of people of us inviting tourists or us going as tourists to a place where we are just sitting and watching something. I think what is important is to be connected, to experience, and to be involved. And how can one do it? So if you're saying that, okay, you want to go to the beach and experience a beach, then get involved with the fishing community. There are nets to be pulled. There is a little bit to know where our fish comes from, and if you become a part of it, then you're also contributing. Yeah. So if we are to look at visitors going to farmlands, then can people as tourists be involved in learning about farming? Can they help the farmer and do a little bit of transplanting rice, plowing the land, and these kind of things? If you're going to the forest, then can you help us, while we are visiting the forest, getting to learn about the biodiversity in the forest or experiencing a waterfall? Can you help us in, collecting all the garbage that was left there the last time? And can we learn more about what happens when we, throw this little bit of plastic carelessly into pristine land? And so I think, that the shift needs to be planned. We need to have a very, well thought of vision for tourism, where if we are saying there needs to be a shift to hinterland tourism, shift to villages, then we need to plan how to do that, so that we don't have issues like this where suddenly you have so many footfalls, you don't know how to deal with it. It's an intrusion into the lives of people, and therefore we need to again bring all the responsible tourism enterprises together. It's such a big force. Here you see people going and supporting big companies and big hotels, and the contribution is zilch, because you are just getting a very superficial experience. But if we get a collective together and we work together and put out a plan, implementable plan, where each of us can say that, okay, we can manage these many people in the year. We will handle these many people in the year, where we will take them to XYZ places. And it will not just be visiting, it will be getting the visitors to be proactive. So we've done that as part of serendipity, where we had daily registrations of more than 40 people. We got them to not only visit the fields in Santa Cruz, but also be a part of growing vegetables, doing a little bit of transplanting rice. I think this is essential. We have high-end tourists, which and many of us also, we go to the gym maybe and spend a lot of money. We can do gymming in the fields and gymming in the fishing villages. Why shouldn't we do that? So I think there is we need to capitalize on this, and we can do it. We can shift numbers to villages, but it has to be done with responsibility. It has to be done with involvement and accountability.
Thank you. And getting your hands dirty, as you would like to call it, actually going in the field and experiencing. Now, you spoke about sustainable tourism enterprises, and we know this actually closely working with one called Responsible Tourism Collective, who's actually part of this on a very large scale. We know now Talula wants to go to, shift the focus to villages and do it in a responsible way. Mahendrabab wants to do it. I want to do it. And you want to do it. But one of the most important players here or the stakeholder here is the government. How easy or difficult is it to convince the government to work on something like this? And what are the chances of it not working out and actually backfiring where you have plenty of, because when something gets promoted in a certain way, it can backfire, as you said, with the cleanest village as well. So how is this as a challenge for, how do you foresee this as a challenge? Because government happens to be one of the major players in this particular industry.
Well, I completely agree, Varun, that the government is one of the biggest stakeholders also in Goa in the tourism space. So I think, as with most other things, the idea of tourism also requires a systems thinking approach. So to me, a systems thinking approach is essentially one where we don't look at a problem in isolation and try to solve that, but we look at it in context of everything else that surrounds it and everything that connects with it. So one of the philosophies that I live by is that everything on this planet is interconnected, right? So once you kind of start approaching it like that, you see that, okay, tourism is not just tourism, it's also livelihoods, it's also pollution, it's also so many other things. And I think what Goa really needs before we jump into promoting any kind of tourism, including responsible tourism or rural tourism, is because it's a small state with a smaller population, I think it's one of the best places to experiment with this, is for people to talk to each other and across different stakeholders. So the government and responsible travel businesses and hotel chains and the local villages, all of us need to sit down and talk about it and put on the table what is it that we want, right? So what is our ask? So when we put that out on the table, everybody hears that, and then it's up to us to figure out a way to talk to each other and figure out how we can make these individual asks happen without damaging the whole system itself. Because we are all, it's like, I'll give you an analogy. It's like 50 people dancing together while holding hands, right? And not in a circle. It's like everybody's standing in the middle and everybody's holding hands and all that. If one person gets pushed, the whole group is going to fall. It's not just that one person, right? And this is something like that we are all deeply and intricately connected to each other. And therefore, we must make sure that no one person falls in the whole group or in that whole ecosystem. It's our responsibility to make sure that each and every person who's in that group is, they have stability. And that, right? So government, hotel chains, everybody who has invested money in it, who has invested their life in it, they deserve to make sure that they receive something in return. But the one thing I would say, Goa needs a new story. Because I've lived in Bombay most of my life and I've heard a certain story about Goa. And thankfully, I was one of those rare Mumbaikars who hadn't visited Goa at all. My last visit was in 1996 and then straight in 2016. So I only had that image of Goa in my mind. I actually hadn't spent any time here. But when I came here, I experienced a very different Goa. And for me, that image was very quickly shattered. But that's not so for most other people because they only get to see the beaches and the parties and a certain kind of Goa. If we can change that narrative, change that story, then the other thing that would happen is that you wouldn't have to forcibly restrict people from coming in. The right kind of people will start coming in and the wrong kind would automatically go away from here. Because for them, that story wouldn't resonate. They would say, okay, this is not the kind of experience I want to have, and let me go find that somewhere else. But I think that story needs to be told. First, it needs to be crafted and it needs to be put out and shared by every Goan so that there's a new story being told about Goa. Of what all the villages have and all these hidden treasures of Goa, all that needs to come up. And I think once that starts happening, government will also buy into it because they are generally skeptical about new things. They're also very invested, a lot of money being pumped into, I would say, the wrong things maybe. But like if they see successes, and I think it's up to people like us to show those successes, that listen, there are numbers, we have the numbers, people are coming in and spending money here, right? Now that will convince government that we are also reducing pollution, we're also like contributing to the local economy, and the government also earns money from it without having to clean up a whole lot of garbage at the end of it, right? So that's the story I think we need to tell.
Absolutely, and that's I think that thing has already started where the a lot of people are actually getting into this industry and trying to make it change it in a way that suits this narrative. So I'm really hopeful and glad that this initiative has started in Goa, where a lot of people who have been educated abroad, who have seen the world, and they are coming back and they are kind of putting in all their energies to create this ecosystem, and it is slowly happening. Even the Don Bosco College, I'm sure, is trying to slowly build this kind of things in Goa, and I think this will be very helpful for the students also who are graduating, because they will kind of determine how the image of Goa is projected. Mahendra, let me ask you one tough question in the middle of all this. You have seen Goa since a long time. So if I were to ask you, what is that one village which everyone should? It's like the best kept secret of Goa, which is perfect for something like rural tourism, but it is not opened up yet. What would you say, Mahendra? That one village of Goa which is perfect for this, perfect example of rural tourism.
I can't possibly say one village. Goa, every village has something or the other unique about it. So if you go to pick up one village, it's going to be very difficult to.
Your favorite, Mahendra?
Well,
I said it was a tough question.
Locally, I could say, because I know ins and outs of it, where you have a complete cross section of the flavor. You have the river by the side, you have the springs, you have the mountains, you have the hills, you have the aristocratic houses, Indo-Portuguese houses, and still some mud houses. So speaking about the architecture, maybe speaking about the life, maybe, and very few the what we say is the Kulbi or that living. Otherwise, Lotani has everything or most of the things what we would like to show people. Even one of the oldest sundial, which is still in working condition. I think
Yes.
I should be proud of speaking about it, because that's the only one I feel is still working.
Absolutely, and it is right outside the Lotlim Church, and I've had the privilege of seeing that. And of course, you missed out ancestral Goa and Bigfoot, which is such an integral part of Lotlim, and you, of course, the legendary Mahendra Alvarez. So thank you for telling that story of Lotlim to all of us, because I think that is what is very important. These villages need some people who can tell their stories out loud. Tanula, I'll come back to the question that Gilbert asked about people moving from villages to cities, and then it kind of becomes, their karma bhumi, and they forget the other part of it. And probably that is why there is a small neglect of how they could be developed. What do you feel about this? Is it impactful that is happening because of migration? The villages are losing out.
I wouldn't agree completely. I myself am a migrant. I've moved from, my parents moved from, their villages and came to Panjim. So I was born and brought up in Panjim. Having said that, I think each one who migrates has the opportunity to use, one is the wealth of knowledge of their original village and the new wealth, that they gain from the so-called migration. So for me, it was to celebrate my values, that I had built from, and the, intricacies of what I had learned about my own village, whether it was Mashe or Veli, and then look at, the ownership I had of Panjim, of Taligaon, and the surrounding areas. For me, I think Khazan was my home. Everywhere I went, wherever there was a mangrove, I associated the mangroves with home, So there is, of course, this problem, but I know a lot of people who migrate to the city for, whatever work they're doing, whether they're teaching, whether they're working in a company, whether they run some business. But memories of their roots still follow, their heart and follow where they are. And I know a lot of them who then have taken to writing about, their, let's say, folk stories from their villages, so many things, memories from their villages, childhood memories from their villages. So I think these are important, and I think it's important to share, both the past and the present with people. So I think the challenges are there, but it is important for us to celebrate both. I think we are lucky that we have the opportunity to celebrate both.
Thank you, Tarula. Vinod, people always say tourism is a two-way process. What if the question comes from our YouTube chat as well? What if we focus on rural tourism and the people who are staying there actually begin to kind of, replicate the lifestyle of the visitors? What I mean is it gets commercialized, as you said. So what is that fine line between development and staying authentic, as you would like? What is your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts on this?
Once again, an excellent question from whoever has asked it. So this is one of the challenges that we have faced actually, that when we go to villages, we try and ask our participants not to bring their urban life with them. So for example, we say, let's not carry our laptops and cell phones and cameras and all of that all the time, because then that becomes a distraction for you. You're not experiencing the authenticity of that experience over there anyway. Also, you're putting ideas into people's heads over there, because they only see you for a short amount of time. Like you're there for a day or two carrying these expensive gadgets and things like that, but they don't realize how much you've put in to get those things. So for example, your life back in the city may be like 12 to 14 hours of slogging away at a job that you dislike just to be able to afford these things. They don't see that. So we try and actually have conversations about these issues with both groups. We actually make our participants sit down. So in Ladakh, for example, we stay at this beautiful school and we get our students to have a conversation with the local students, and they ask such questions, like they describe what their life in the city looks like, what life in the village looks like. So it's a two-way process over there, because both sides get to hear each other's stories and both sides get to share what's nice about their life and what's not so nice about their lives. So it creates a more complete picture rather than just one side of the story, right? So I think that's a very important element. At the same time, it's not like, considering that we have all these benefits and all of these, it's not okay for us to tell other people that they can't have it. But it's up to us to also tell them the whole story, that listen, you can have this, but this is the price you will have to pay for it. Not just a financial price, but an emotional, physical, spiritual, all sorts of prices that you have to pay for it. Is that something you're willing to pay? Or is there are there other ways around it where you can get some of these benefits without letting these things take over your life? Right. So I think these are the kind of conversations that open up both sides, the visitors and the hosts, to larger questions. And it doesn't have to be, you don't have to give them a ready-made answer. It's really about planting those seeds of thought in people's minds and then letting them figure it out for themselves. Then they can read, they can talk to other people and find out, you know. So those are my thoughts on this.
I'd like to add something here, Varun, if you don't mind. And I agree with Vinod completely. And I just wanted to share an experience of a study trip, that I and my colleague organized last year to Spiti Valley. And we had taken about 10 students. They were like architects, architectural interns, school students, and college students. And when we went there, now there are a lot of tourists that go both during the summer and the winter. And of course, winter is largely to take pictures of the snow leopard. Now there, what happens is a lot of people use dry toilets, and I was already familiar with how to use dry toilets. But our whole team of participants were really hesitant, because the family that we were staying already had a toilet, which was a modern toilet. And they actually were not using it, and they didn't know how it was built, but they just did it for the convenience of visitors, so it was badly designed and had its difficulty in use. So what is happening now is a lot of people who run homestays in Spiti Valley are building toilets for the tourists for their convenience, and it is causing a lot of environmental degradation. In a way, it has a huge environmental impact, because otherwise, because of the dry toilets, they use all that as manure for their what they grow. And then we did a workshop with some of the teachers in a local school. We met some of the villagers in the nearby village, and we talked to them, that as villagers, you should not appease to all the demands of the visitors. They may pay you, but you can't change things which will have a detrimental impact on the land and your lifestyle. So we were successful to some extent, but I think we need to insist, we need to set up certain guidelines and lines which we do not cross.
That's true.
So well put, Talula and Vinod. I mean, I think this actually serves as a very important guideline for all of us who are into this field, who are venturing there, and who want to, kind of change, because this is a real danger that could take place. I mean, we have seen it, and you have seen it in different places, and I think this is a eye opener for all of us. At this point, I would ask Gilbert or all the other teaching faculties if you would have any questions for our participants, or the participants have any questions for the other panelists as well. We can take that up before we go further. Do you have any questions, Gilbert, that you would like to ask from your side or any of the other teaching faculties?
Varun, I've shared a few questions on WhatsApp with you. If you could kindly check that also.
Yes,
the questions that are coming on YouTube, I'm
I
sharing them on WhatsApp. Yeah,
I will take them up
okay,
subsequently.
perfect.
If you have any questions from your side, or if any of the other teaching faculty or the members have any questions, they can ask at this point. Because we have been so closely associated with travel and tourism, being a part of the travel and tourism department of the Don Bosco College. So what are your questions? What are your doubts? Because you are sending this, fleet of students into this in future. So what are your questions that you might have?
So I had one question to ask our panelists, because when we talk about rural tourism, we are talking at a very a small level. I mean, I don't know how to put it, but I've actually worked with a company called Off Trail Adventures, and we've been successful into taking very small groups for treks and to eco-sensitive areas in terms of different parts of Goa. But the biggest issue that we had when doing or organizing these treks and stuff like that was the costing, because though we had a good audience that was coming, but the cost would become very high because we're taking a very small group. So when we talk about mass tourism, it becomes that the costing comes down, and anybody and everybody who have a similar mindset can then go for it. So the issue is, how do you, I don't know how to put it, but how do you get this point? I mean, how do you mix the points of pricing and the quality of tourism? Because sometimes the rich are not really the best people in terms of acknowledging the culture and stuff like that.
I agree with you, and I would also like to add a question to that and put it to the panelists one by one. Is this whole concept of rural tourism, however interesting it may sound, is it sustainable for someone new coming into it, like the students coming out? How sustainable it is? What are the challenges there? And how do you feel it can, how can you make a living in it? What were the challenges? Mahendra, let us start with you. What do you feel? The two questions are the pricing points, how it is because of, the number of tourists being taken, and the sustainability of it.
If you go to think, whenever you are giving something which is unique, you have to pay the price. If you lower the price and start giving it to the mass, the whole essence will be lost. So it is not only for the rich, but we have to work it out in such a way that people who are interested can do it. And say, take a group which can, so to say, make it break even. Never think about a bigger profit. And every time try to do something a little more creative. So interaction is going to pay you that amount which they have spent, and they are going to go happy. So if you start thinking of a bigger profit, then you won't be able to run this thing. And secondly, when you start working on the profit, everybody thinks, okay, they have to make a huge profit. Work with break even and a little amount, and I have a feeling this can work out.
Okay. Talula, if I may, I would like to ask your thoughts on this as well.
Yeah,
And
I
then we'll
agree
get
with
Vinod.
Mahendra absolutely in what he said. And, so I have largely worked with students, college students and school students. And I feel there needs to be a lot of, basically we need to do knowledge sharing. So if you're saying that we're taking a number of tourists or a group there, we need to look at, dissemination of knowledge. That is one. Then sharing skills. There is so much that the visitors can learn, right? And the other thing is, can they also contribute in helping the people there in the village? One is you're going there as a visitor, but like when we were in Spiti, let us say, for example, we went with the community on a given day to, help them work on a water body which was high in the mountains, because that is their only source of water. So we went there to do a little bit of desilting, digging, experienced, all of them singing, having a merry time, but also that little bit of this contribution, to the work that is to be done by the community, and also learned a skill from the community. So when you do all this knowledge sharing, whether it is, working with the community, milking the cows, whether it is working with the community, farming, whether it is restoring a water body, whether it is learning how to weave, all this gives you then as a visitor and another idea of what you can go back and do in your village. Also it helps you tie up, maybe you can associate with another villager and work something out as an entrepreneur. So there are a lot of opportunities, and but these need to be looked at so that there is no indiscriminate, you don't sort of exploit somebody, right? You work in partnership, you work as a team, you share knowledge, you learn from each other, and you can't take big numbers. But yes, I can go there, visit the place, and then take some other people to some other place, or allow visitors from this state maybe to come. You can do something like that. What if Goa and let's say Spiti had a exchange program where you have visitors from Spiti, maybe students and young people, youngsters coming to Goa, learning about how we run tourism, how rural tourism is run, how agri-tourism is promoted, and they go and do something back in their villages, and we also go there and learn something from them. So I think the focus should be on knowledge sharing, so that then the numbers can be limited, because definitely I don't think it's a good idea to take a huge number of people. But yes, we can identify what each village, what each place has its terms of its assets, and what kind of an unique experience it can give, and take a certain number to a given place. Imagine if we have a calendar year, and the same tourists can go to, I mean, it'll be, I think we can occupy, let's say, a single visitor over a number of years visiting Goa and its villages, and it's easily possible. So the key is not to think about numbers, but to think about quality, to do knowledge sharing, and to take these experiences to do something back in our villages also.
Thank you so much, Tarula, for that answer. What Mahendra Bab and Tarula say makes sense. I mean, you need to make sure that it is quality, it is, you're doing something, giving back to the society and things. But when it comes to doing something for the rest of your life, or, like doing something, money becomes, or sustainability becomes a defining factor at times for people to get involved. So what is your take on that? How is sustainability, or because money is motivating factor for a lot of people to change a job or doing something full time into it. Like people go for jobs outside Goa, outside India, because they get more money, they get a better standard of living. So how does that factor count with respect to rural tourism for you? What do you think about this?
Really good question. So I think one is there needs to be a fundamental shift in how we look at how much money we need, right? So I think that's a larger, longer term question though. because we have these predefined notions of what a good life means and how much money is required for that. And thankfully, through the experiences I've had living in some of these rural communities and interacting with them, I've realized that a large part of it is nonsense. That we have somehow just accepted it blindly because other people have told us that this is the way the world is, and that's not necessarily true at all. Of course, you do need money. You do need money in this world to buy land, to build your houses, to feed your children and families, and all of that. But you don't need as much as you think you do often. Especially if your life is self-sufficient, you're able to grow some of your own food, or if you have houses that are designed to capture like solar energy for free. For example, like the sun is like beaming down on us all day long. So if there are things like that which we can use, your lifestyle becomes far less expensive, and therefore you're able to make do with a lot less money. And secondly, the structure of your life becomes much stronger because you're not depending only on money. Like there's so much other stuff that's coming in, other resources that are helping you stay alive. Having said that, I feel in terms of earning money, it's a good uh, practice to also look at how some of these ideas can be monetized, because there are people willing to pay and have these experiences. So like what I have done, I can share my experience with Journeys with Meaning. What we've done is we haven't kept our prices low. In fact, our trips are premium trips where we charge the average participant a fairly high amount because we do not negotiate with our local partners at all. So we just ask them, how much do you need to make a living? If a taxi driver says X amount, a homestay host says X amount, we just give it to them blindly. We don't negotiate. Now we tell this price to our participants and say, this is what we do, right? Now, if you're willing to pay for this and come with us, please come with us. At the end of it, I still will not guarantee you a very comfortable stay because you're going to be staying in a school dormitory. You will have to use a dry toilet. We'll probably make you trek on most of the days, and you will have to milk the cows, clean the garbage, pick up waste, all of those things. But a lot of people are very happy to pay for that experience because they've never done it in their lives, and they value this. And what we do is we try and keep some seats on our trips available at cost for people or even subsidized, so that people, like there are lots of people who are interested, but maybe not everybody can afford it. So for every 10 people who are able to pay the full cost of the trip, let's say it's 50,000 for a trip, for a 11 to 12 day trip, 10 people pay that amount. I've already included a small portion of that to cover the cost for somebody else. Right? So basically, other people who can't pay that much, who can only pay 10,000, 20,000, are most welcome to join us. And we take them on that because their cost is subsidized. Sometimes we ask them to work with us. I say that document the trip for us, take pictures, take videos, interview people, just help me in whatever way you can. That reduces my time on the trip that I have to put into that kind of work. And you're kind of making sure that you're able to travel at a very subsidized cost. So there are these creative ways in which you can work it out so that you ensure access to everybody while keeping the price high and making sure that those who are able to pay for it without you changing the fundamental nature of your trip. You don't have to compromise. You don't have to offer them Mountain Dew when they visit your house. We in fact tell our hosts, please do not do that. Give them Nimbu Pani, give them a cup of your local tea. That's absolutely fine. But the stories that you tell around that makes people interested in having that experience. And I think like we have had no trouble selling an uncomfortable trip to people because people, it may be physically uncomfortable, but emotionally it changes a lot for people. And in the long run, I think it just hits them in their heart and say that, okay, these are things I did not think about. And now it's making me think about so many different aspects of life. And that's what they're paying for. So I think it's
wonderful. Yeah. It was mainly for the new students who are actually looking to make a career in this field. I mean, how they approach this scenarios. This was one of the reasons I asked this particular question. So I have a question on chat as well. So the question is, for a student who wants to begin village tourism, what is the procedure one needs to follow? Do they need to have a license, permission, or could they begin without any formalities? What about the security of the tourists or the villagers? I would like to start the answer to this question because Soul Traveling as a company has actually worked in this field about the licenses as well. So firstly, you need currently the government licenses mainly are with a trading license possibly or a tourism registration that you need to do. there is a new gazette that is out which says that you need to inform the local bodies as well. It has not been implemented yet. It is out for debate, and this is being opposed by a lot of people because they say that every village that you visit, mostly with adventure sports, that you might have to involve the local panchayat each time. For soul traveling, we work closely with the local governing bodies almost at all our locations. So we don't have to face any problems as such. But the major licenses that you need currently is having a tourism license, or you can work with a company who already has it. You can collaborate with them to create this kind of things. So question comes to the safety aspect of tourists or the villagers. You have taken trips to across the country. So what about that aspect? What about the safety aspects which comes?
I think, again, this is a very important question. So what we've done is we've first built a relationship with our local partners. So when we travel to these places, we actually stay at their homes. We spend time with a lot of the community there. Understand, and by spending time there and going there ourselves, we also get a sense of how safe the place is, or how people are generally in that region. And so far, I've felt that over a period of 13, 14 years since I've been working in different aspects, different parts of the country, which are very, very different from each other. I mean, like the Sundarbans is as different from Ladakh as it possibly could be. One has no water and the other has only water. So it's like filled with water like 2 times a day, there's a tide coming in. But in each of these places, we have found that once you've built a rapport with the community and they understand why you're coming, then they also make the efforts to make sure that you feel safe, you feel comfortable. And even if there are a few like rough elements over there or something, they shield you from that because they understand that in the long run, a relationship with you, a relationship with people from other places is beneficial to them. And so they make sure of that. Like, we've not had any disturbing experiences, including in places like Kashmir. Like, people have this story of Kashmir as a very violent place. I would say it's the exact opposite. I've been witness to bomb blasts in Bombay, shooting, terrorist attacks, all sorts of things. I've not seen a single bullet in Kashmir so far. And the people over there are so welcoming and so, they really care for you. So I feel like that's an experience. Only when you go there, you'll understand that people do not hate you. People do not have any issues with you. They just want to make sure that you have a good time and that you go back happy and feeling like, you feeling like visiting again. So it's really about building that relationship, I think.
Okay. Okay, Talula, let me ask you a question or an issue that has been dominating our cell phones, our TVs, and our lives for the last 6 months. The pandemic that has fallen on us over the last 6 months. So, how do you think this pandemic will change tourism for good or for bad? And what will its impacts be? Will it promote the rural tourism, or will it just create a sense of no tourism scenario where people don't want to travel? What do you feel will happen? What are your comments on that? And also your concluding remarks, please.
Okay, so I think the pandemic has been good, and I think the pandemic has something to tell us, and it's telling us that all our human actions have been. We need to think about them very carefully, and if you look at it, today we are at a state where there is huge amount of environmental degradation, and during the pandemic we have found where the degradation and lots of insensitive approaches continue, whether it is cutting off trees, whether it is development projects, where it is so all this is continuing. But what the pandemic has done is made people connect to each other. We have bonded with our families, we have bonded with our friends, we have bonded with people around us. We have learned to be more sensitive, that to the things that are around us, and we're looking at things with a different eye. We should have been doing right from the beginning, but somewhere we got lost with let's say material needs, and this pandemic has helped us to understand what our emotional needs are. Having said that, I think right from the pandemic, since the lockdown, I've just been, because I've been doing programs with children, and in fact, being out in the outdoors is absolutely safe if you're doing it, of course, in small numbers. So I've, simply used the time to continue with some of the activities I was doing with children. And as a large part of our outreach and education is to do with children who don't have, too many privileges. So we've been able to reach out to many students to continue teaching about the environment, teaching about the backyard, teaching about the outdoors. And I think therein lies an opportunity, because see, the more time you spend in nature, there is a lot to gain. And it is giving us an opportunity now to simply look at tourism in a different light. And this is the time which we need to capitalize on and support our fellows and friends who are into the responsible tourism sector, because these are supposed to be low scale, connecting to communities. And I'm sure in the villages, people are, of course, continuing with their daily life. You see forest communities, if you see tribal communities, they've been cushioned so far. They've been working, and doing their routine on a regular basis. It is the urban areas that have been impacted the most. It's the urban areas which have been critical and have been, instrumental in, let's say, the spread of the virus. It is also international travel, domestic travel, which has led to the spread of the disease. So I think this is the right time for us to look at tourism in a new light, to look at, strengthening our villages, strengthening models in the villages where people can experience the outdoors, in a very, very simple, emotionally rich experiential way.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Talula. Mahendra Bab, let me come to you now. And you have witnessed a lot of things in the Goa tourism. You've been in this industry for more than 40 years, but this is probably the first time even you are witnessing a situation of pandemic, where everything stops and everything kind of changes again and redevelops in a way. So, what are your thoughts on this pandemic? What will it benefit the villagers who want to kind of start? Because a lot of people have come back home and they have started living in their villages or their old houses. People who are working outside Goa, probably in Bangalore or Mumbai, they come back home. They're working from home, and probably they can also suggest a few ideas as well there, and they can develop, in that sense. So, how do you think the things will change after this pandemic?
What I feel is people should be a little more creative. Try and do with what they have. Now, whatever the richness which the nature has given us, try and use that. Like a lot of people who have come down, they have started small enterprises. Like they plant a few, they have a little vegetable garden, they cook those things and supply it to different people. Like this is what we are speaking about, rural tourism. So people who can interact with nature, can do something with nature and show people how they can live with nature, or rather what was there earlier, how we lived with nature. Now we have gone a little to an artificial or this style of living, of things getting packed up and things picking up from the supermarkets and all that. But this is truly living with nature. And if you are a little creative, you can do a number of things. Now, I'll give you a small example what we have been doing these days. Now, everyone wears a mask, and that is just used and thrown out. And they are cotton ones which you can wash and reuse. So earlier, when we had these games, different games of Goa and things like that, games of Goa, we were to play with different sticks and stones. Now, those we have changed to masks, and we have created those games and we have displayed at the big.
I think there is a connection issue again.
Sorry.
Yes,
hello.
Magnify, please go on. Now we can hear
Yeah.
you. We can hear you. Yeah.
What I was trying to say is, earlier we tried to create these games with sticks and stones. Now we have these masks which we throw. They are each one's mask. We can try and play around with them and do something creative. Have the same games like X and O and all that using colored masks. It will. Hello. Hello. Varun, can you hear?
Yes, we can hear you.
Did you follow what I was speaking, telling you about the
games? Yes,
using
of
the
course.
mask as the traditional games. So people, if they are a little creative and try to do something with what they have, I think that is one thing that which can give a little twist to the whole tourism and everything.
Wonderful. And we always used to play these games with whatever is available with us in nature or, things. Now we have the masks and we can, actually use them to play this game. That's a wonderful thought, Mahendra.
Yeah.
Vinod, okay, let me, before coming to Vinod, there was a question on how can people get involved in rural tourism? What are the job opportunities? So there are multiple answers here because a lot of people in Goa and in India are actually going in rural tourism now. People want to kind of create these experiences and have people involved in this. So you can definitely get a lot of companies who are actually working on this changes, because slowly there is a shift of people who are moving from mainstream tourism, if I may call it that, to experience based or a rural or offbeat tourism, so to say. So that is one thing. And second thing, of course, which is there in any industry, is creating something on your own. So you can work out your solutions to different problems that people are facing. And it need not be a direct industry, which is, getting people to show rural tourism. It can be something that complements it. It can be something that helps it. So there are a lot of problem statements out there. You need to find solution one by one. And trust me, you can actually get a lot of opportunities doing that. And I think the key again is being creative, as Mahendra said, while doing this. Coming back, I mean, everyone is talking about the pandemic. Everyone is saying that, it is going to change the way tourism is done. What no one knows is it for a good thing or is it in a bad way? It might have impacts like economic impacts on people, where people might not be able to travel that much. There might be safety issues while traveling. At the same time, people might be more, more they might be willing to try new things, which lets them experience new things rather than going with crowded places. What is your take on the pandemic and your concluding remarks,
So I think I agreed with what was said earlier. Talil also said about the pandemic being a force for good in some ways, in the sense that definitely it's shown us our limits. It's shown us what would happen if we do not kind of tone down the way we live, or reconsider the way we live. So on the flip side, of course, there are going to be impacts. People are going to lose their livelihoods. People are going to be affected by all of that. And I think that's something for us to consider again, that why are we living lives where one black swan event like this can completely throw a spanner in the works? Now, that's something for us to consider in the long run. Are we designing our lives and lifestyles and our economies in the best possible way then? So I think the pandemic is offering us that opportunity. I mean, we got thrown into the deep end of the pool, unfortunately, in trying to answer that question. But here we are. So let's try and look at what are the best ways for us to go forward. On the good side, I think it will limit international travel considerably for some years to come, and that's a good thing because you won't have as many carbon emissions, and people will also rediscover their own regions and their own lands and their cultures around them. So I think that should be the focus going forward. At least for we should make sure that we have this time to just tell people that, okay, listen, you are anyway not able to travel outside. Why don't you look at your own country and explore some of these beautiful experiences that are already here? And that's something I think people will want to take up because they've been cooped up for nearly a year now, or 7-8 months now, and people are really looking forward to getting out. Now, if we can make sure that there is safety, there is hygiene, there's all of those factors which people consider important, it's definitely something that people will want to travel with. So I think that it will slowly start happening again in the next 3 to 4 months. You will see people coming in, people wanting safer experiences, and that's a beautiful opportunity right now for young students of tourism also to consider that what are the things that we can offer here right now, so that the right kind of people are being attracted into Goa, the right kind of experiences are being offered, and something that doesn't just bring in money. Money is important, but also make sure that there are all these other factors that we discussed that are balanced out. Right? So I think that's the way forward, and that's what we should use this opportunity for. And it's a beautiful opportunity because this, it's going to happen in other forms later, but right now we are here, all of us in the middle of it. And if we can harness this opportunity to tell the right kind of stories and get the right kind of people in and offer them the right kind of experiences, we would have achieved something very, very significant for decades to come. So those are my thoughts on it.
Thank you so much, Vinod. And you put it beautifully. It's an opportunity. It's a potential. I mean, people might be thinking it's something really bad, but as you, Talila and Mahendra said, it is an opportunity. It's a blessing in a way to change the story of Goa, to tell it in a very new way to people and to project it very differently to the world. With this, we can come to the end of this session, and I'm really grateful to all of you for actually being a part of this and enlightening us with your thoughts. So thank you so much, Mahendra Bab, Talula, Vinod, for joining us today, for sharing your thoughts and being a part of this session. And I thank the Don Bosco College and the Travel and Tourism Department for hosting us today. We are looking forward to doing some very interesting stuff with them. And we are glad that we'll be able to work with the students who kind of will be shaping this. Like, we are talking about it, but trust me, the students will be a big part of this initiative. So I'll hand it over to Gilbert, and to all of you who are watching, do tune in for the future sessions as well by Don Bosco College and Soul Traveling. We have something tomorrow called Ambassadors of Goa, which will give you more details on who are the people who are doing this in different villages as well. And Talula will of course be a part of it, talking about it as well. So thank you so much, and over to you, Gilbert.
Yeah, thank you, Varun. Thank you for hosting such a wonderful panel discussion. And I would want at this point in time to ask all our participants to go down in the YouTube description. There's a feedback form link shared with the participants, and you all can fill your feedback form. The moment you fill up your feedback form, you will get an e-certificate or participation certificate directly sent to your email address that you registered with. Okay, so thank you, Varun. And now I'll hand over to our coordinator, Steffi Dias from the BBA Travel and Tourism Department, who would propose the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Gilbert. I'm guessing you all can hear me?
Yes.
Yes, perfectly.
Yeah, sure. Actually, I realized that, yes, the webinar is coming to an end, but I have realized from what all of you all are saying, it is just the start of something which we could do together. It is things that we can start together as well. So on behalf of Don Bosco's College Panjim, I would like to thank our speakers, Mrs. Talauli De Silva, Vinod Sridhar, and Mahindra Alvarez, and also our curator and moderator, Varun Hegde, for making it such an interactive session. And for all of y'all actually sharing your valuable insights, making us realize that each of us, not just someone who is in this industry long, but anyone, even a new person, can take a step forward and with creativity, understand tourism and take this forward. Yeah. And also realizing that, okay, this exists, but that doesn't mean that just because we have had this pandemic coming in, that this is the end of tourism. That doesn't mean tourism has to be curbed in any way. If we take it forward in the right manner, we can still make sure that tourism grows in the right way. Also, I would like to thank all of y'all for giving us very concrete examples in almost our everyday lives, so that it was something that is a reality going forward. And also, thanks to Soul Traveling for making sure this webinar became a reality, because this is something we wanted to do, but y'all made sure that we could turn this into reality. And lastly, also coming now to our management, I would like to thank Director Father Joachim, our principal, Cedric Silvera, and our IQAC head, Ajit Gopi, as well as the rest of the Salesian family for making sure that all of this was possible. Also, not forgetting my BBA Travel and Tourism team for the brainstorming that we had, right to our event head, Gilbert Mendes, for making sure we took this forward smoothly and effectively. And also, just a little mention to our sponsors. We have Beaumont Lifestyles, as well as some others who helped us along the way, who's Mr. Joy Creations, as well as Seb Fernandez from Woodworks. And we also have our participants, which have made this a possibility. They have given in the valuable questions. They have allowed this to become an interactive session, and thus, I believe, a success. And this is me just saying that a gentle reminder to all of y'all watching on YouTube to go into the description and fill out your feedback forms. So the moment your feedback forms are filled out, your certificates will automatically be coming into your email IDs. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Steffi. With this, I think we've come to an end of today's panel discussion. I would once again thank all the 700 participants who registered with us. We've sent out emails out to you, and thank you once again. And this is how we end at Don Bosco College, and we'll say see you soon, maybe physically, and we meet one-on-one with each panelist as well as each participant who is participating with us virtually. Thank you very much, Ma'am Talula. Thank you very much, Sir Vinod, and thank you very much, Sir Mahendra, for accepting our invitations. And thank you very much, Varun. And we're looking to do something great with you over the next year with our students and with your team at Soul Travel. Thank you very much.